Welcome to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, courageously expanding love with me, Elizabeth Cunningham. Has the way that love has arisen in you seemed out of place or even taboo? My mission is to expand the conversation of love in the world. Is it possible to have deep, loving, healthy relationships? Have you ever been curious about having more than one relationship or partner at a time? Get ready to transform in love, be courageous, and set yourself free. In this show, we talk about relationships, sex, love, and the ways we wish we could be, but never thought were possible. All right, welcome to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, courageously expanding love. And today we are talking about experiencing intense pleasure. Oh, so yummy that we get to have these conversations every single week. But before we get into that and introduce our phenomenal guest for today, a reminder that the Elizabeth Cunningham Show is live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. on the Transformation Network Facebook page, and then is aired on YouTube and most podcast platforms every single Thursday. All links for everything that I just said are in the show notes. So scroll down and pick your favorite platform and hit the subscribe or notification button so you never miss an episode. All right, so on today's episode, we will be talking with Wendy Perkins about experiencing intense pleasure. Wendy Perkins is an orgasm and neuro-pleasure coach that specializes in biohacking the nervous system to increase pleasure. A self-proclaimed nerd with ADHD, Wendy has mastered the art of hyperfocusing to learn about the human body and how everything works. She believes that everyone deserves to experience maximum pleasure and orgasmic bliss, and she works tirelessly to help people achieve this goal. Hello, Wendy. Thank you for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. Anytime I can talk about pleasure is a great day.
I feel the exact same way. I'm just like, all right, sweet. We're going to talk about pleasure for an hour. Fantastic. I'm so ready for it. Yes, exactly. So in introducing this topic, there's a couple things that I, just setting the groundwork for like, okay, pleasure is this like huge umbrella, right? So we're talking about like some of the things that you talk about are biohacking the nervous system, like to increase pleasure. What does that mean? What do you mean biohacking the nervous system to increase pleasure?
Okay. So basically, long story short about the human body, how it works, is our body is a physical representation of our nervous system. A lot of people think that our diagnoses are where everything starts, but it actually starts from the nervous system and then goes out. And this has become really clear in the last 20 years of research and how the body works. And a few years ago, when I started becoming, almost 5 years ago now, when I started becoming an orgasm coach, I was all about just fast tracking to pleasure. I wanted to like stay away from the nervous system as much as possible because that meant stress and trauma, and I did not want to do anything about it. So I started figuring out ways to fast track that process of healing. And that was kind of my mission and how I got started. So over time, obviously things evolve because you learn more and get more experience and help more people and discover more things. So that's where I come from. It was really about how quickly I can get people to orgasm.
I feel like a lot of people would agree with you on that one. It's like talking about well, I guess a lot of people, some people like the extended pleasure, right?
Yeah.
Like don't have to orgasm right away. But I feel like quite a few people are like, oh my God, how fast can we orgasm? So that makes sense. That checks out.
Yeah. And with that being said, it wasn't necessarily about quick orgasm. It was a lot of people were coming to me because they couldn't get out of their head while they were
Mm.
having sex. They had too many wandering thoughts and couldn't really get focused and be able to orgasm. So it was about fast tracking that process, like how to get them out of their head and back into their body so they could experience the pleasure, however long that may be.
Right. So what are some of the things that you discovered in this process of how do you get out of your head and get into your body and be able to have amazing orgasms?
So number one, most people are very disconnected from their body. Our past experiences have led us to states of dissociating. Um, I know really technical terms, but how it shows up in everyday life, scrolling mindlessly on social media, binge watching, Netflix or any variety of things that you do where you're not thinking about it and you're basically not present in your body and you're just mindlessly focused on something outside of yourself. And so with that, people don't have the experience of being present with their emotions and even with their thoughts. Sometimes their thoughts are going crazy, but they don't have any experience with actually stopping to take a moment to step back and think about their thoughts.
Yeah.
Right? Like observe their thoughts,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
And so part of it was learning, okay, how can I fast track people getting into their body and how can I help people learn how to step into that observer role instead of reactionary role? And since it's all in the nervous system, there are ways to actually shortcut it. One of the simplest ways is just through breathing. Most people do not know how to breathe correctly because we sit in desks as kids at school and we start learning how to breathe incorrectly because of sitting for so long, or in pictures, like we suck in our stomach, to make us look better. And that all goes against the way our natural breath is supposed to be. And that causes stress on your nervous system, which could impact your ability to orgasm.
Wow. I
Right.
actually had, I mean, it's so interesting. I'm just thinking about like my own training and like what I know about breathing and how that impacts your breath. But you just said so succinctly how breathing, just even from a young age, and how we train ourselves to not breathe properly and the actual impact that that has. Because like you think about it and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. If you don't breathe properly, then that's going to have a serious impact on you. But like actually thinking about it as a lived experience of like, but how does it impact you? And one of those ways being that have you don't have orgasms, or it's hard to orgasm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of my clients all orgasm. I'm not saying they all do. I do have people who come to me who've never been able to orgasm and then they do. uh, but most of my clients have orgasms and been orgasming, many of them from a very young age, but they are more, I mostly work with women. And so they're mostly, from clitoral stimulation, either by their hands or a vibrator, and they have never been able to experience internal orgasm.
Mhm.
And that an internal orgasm absolutely requires a good flow of energy through your nervous system, and that's impacted by your breath.
Okay. So, yeah, no, that's really brilliant. And so how does trauma come into play, or how does the ways in which your nervous system is impacted, because you talk about not breathing and not
Right.
learning how to breathe properly, but you also mentioned at the beginning experiencing trauma, and that a lot of trauma happens in the nervous system. So tell us
Right.
a little bit more about that.
So trauma in simple terms is unresolved stress. Every time you get stressed, and by stress, I mean anytime you have to take action that's uncertain. So stress could actually be a good thing or a bad thing. For example, you could be getting ready to go out at night, with your friends and have no idea what's in store for the evening. That's uncertain. So that stress and that excitement is a good thing. And then, of course, there's the bad stress that we all know too well, right? And that is what, anytime that happens, anytime a stressful situation comes up, there's a whole bunch of chemical reactions that happen in your body that creates energy. And if you learn from science class, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just has to move through. And humans, unfortunately, over the last a few thousand years have developed these societal practices that keep us from relieving our stress. And we usually don't feel comfortable letting the energy flow through our body. And so we hold it all in, and that has to go somewhere. It doesn't just disappear, and it gets stuck in your body, in primarily in your fascia. And that is actually what trauma is. And so that stuck energy in your fascia impacts your nervous system and the flow of the energy of your nervous system.
Wow. And then how long can it stay there?
Forever.
Forever? Like it won't just,
Forever.
like, I guess my question is like, can it be resolved like over time? Like if you don't do anything, let's say you don't do anything about it at all. Can it get resolved over time?
So it's at the most simplest terms, it's energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can, if you're doing things like exercising, but not so much where you're causing more stress, so you're not releasing, like there has to be you're releasing more stress than you're creating.
Right.
Things of that nature. You're getting enough sleep, because you actually do release some of the energy during the sleep cycle. Good breathing. Say you're taking breathwork courses, you're doing yoga, you're doing some of the activities that will move that energy through your body. It will release. The problem is most people are not doing the kinds of activities that release the energy, and they're just adding more on and adding more on. And so the energy has to go somewhere. So that's what actually impacts your body system. This is what causes inflammation in all different areas in your body. It's stress and trauma doesn't stay in one area. It stays in the area that it gets stuck in, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. No, what I'm hearing you say is that, well, actually, what I'm hearing you say that you actually, I don't know if you actually said, was that we're actually taking on more stress than we're processing. And so, yes, we're, generally doing activities that may release stress, but we have like a buildup of stress.
Yes.
Right. And especially since we've been gaining stress since we've been like little kids, especially like if you have a traumatic past, which we'll get into that. I'm going to ask you questions about that for sure.
Yeah.
But that we have this like buildup of stress. And so even though we may be doing activities to release that it's actually probably not enough. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yes. In general, it's not enough. Like it's very rare that I come across, well, most people who are coming to me are having issues because they haven't figured out how to get that balance of releasing the energy. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who have figured it out, and they're probably pretty stress-free. But one of the most simple things, as I said, is breath. But even just like shaking and moving your body is getting rid of that energy. That's where I was saying our societal expectations usually don't allow us to move that energy. So a lot of times kids are fidgeting, because they're fidgeting in class and they're told sit still, sit still, sit still. And actually that whole fidgeting process is a natural release of the stored energy, the stress of the environment of having to focus and pay attention. And instead now they're learning how to hold that in. And most people, are in lots of environments where it's not necessarily socially acceptable to just start randomly shaking and moving your body.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. Well, no, that's a beautiful explanation. And also like, again, how it really impacts you. Okay. We're going to take a really quick break. But when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more, get into more depth of, how does this show up? And even ask the question, like, even if you haven't had like this super traumatic past, like, what does that even mean for you as well? All right. So we'll be right back. All right, welcome back from the break. We are at the Elizabeth Cunningham Show. That's where you're at right now. If you're watching, if you're listening, Courageously Expanding Love. And we are talking to Wendy Perkins about pleasure and intense pleasure and how you use your nervous system to access pleasure. And now on our current segment, talking about, okay, but your nervous system stores trauma. And that's what we are starting to talk about, is like how your nervous system builds stress over time, starting when you were like a little kid sitting in a chair in a classroom being told to not fidget and sit still and holding that stress in your body. I really love that example, actually, of like how as a society we don't allow people to move our bodies, right? Like it's I don't know, that's wild to me. But like, so I know that sometimes when we say the word trauma, people think, oh my gosh, like a terrible thing happened to you. And
Right.
we do mean that, but we also mean other types of trauma. So share a little bit more about like other types of trauma as well, or what people may experience as trauma.
Right. So this is why I think it's really important to understand that trauma is just, I say just like, like it's no big deal. I don't mean that.
Yeah.
But trauma is a buildup of stress. And so depending on the intensity of the stress and how long it goes on, if it's repeated stress over and over and over again, it's going to have these impacts. Or if it's super, a big traumatic event and very impactful and very emotional and causes a whole bunch of chaos in your basically in your nervous system, it's going to have an impact, because as much energy as you create, you have to release. So even small, simple stresses of daily life can be super impactful. And I find that a lot of the people who have big traumatic events, like the capital T trauma that we could all probably name, more than we would like to. They know they have trauma. They know that the trauma has been holding them back, because there's more to it than just stress. Whereas the people who are like, oh, I haven't had a traumatic life. Oh, my life has been easy, or all these different, thoughts that they have. Once you start talking to them and breaking it down, they live underneath a lot of stress. And it's that repeated stress that doesn't get released that creates the trauma in your nervous system. So it's almost irrelevant how the trauma gets there, whether it's a big capital T event kind of trauma, or sustained trauma, or sustained, it all shows up physically the same way.
No, I think that's really, really important to note, is that your nervous system is going to store that trauma regardless of how it gets there. And so kind of that imposter syndrome comes in, right? Like, oh, who am I to like complain? Like, I'm from the Midwest. My mom says things like, even if I did complain, who would listen to me? Right. And but it's that attitude, right? And let's be clear, like, I love my mom. I feel like I use my mom as examples of like this Midwestern person, and like she's an amazing human being. Like, let's just be clear. But it is those examples of like, oh yeah, like if I complain, who would listen to me? Oh, nothing terrible has happened to me, so I'm fine. Like the dreaded I'm fine.
Yep.
And really allowing yourself to look at the stress that you've had in your life and allowing that to be real. Like, that's okay that you've experienced stress, and being
Right.
able to like actually look at it, because I think we do have this idea that like it needs to be this like terrible thing that happened to us, or like this big event, or like this long extent, like, being in an incredibly abusive relationship for like 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. When it really is that we all are just building stress over time. Because I personally, you said earlier, you were like, oh, like people who are able to like have stress-free lives. I was like, I don't know anybody who has a stress-free life. I have
That's
never
kind of why I said it. Who does?
like, I've never met anyone who's like, I have zero stress in my life. I'd be like, really? Are you okay? I
Yeah.
believe you. Kind of. But
Uh, my opinion on someone who says they have basically a stress-free life is either they have become fully enlightened and mastered all of the physical laws of this realm, or they're completely dissociated from the reality of their existence. There's there's really no other way.
Yeah, and I but we are, as you said, we are taught to disassociate from that,
Yeah,
right?
and it's actually a biological function, and so this is something that has become very clear to me over the past couple years in particular, really getting in and starting to explain to people what is happening into their body when they're stressed, and they start understanding this process of there's only so much energy that your body has at any given time to handle a situation. And so your brain will start reducing function in order to use energy to get you out of the stressful situation. So people who experience prolonged stress are actually the most prone to being completely dissociated, or not complete, it's never completely, from being dissociated from their body, but they have no idea, because the way the process is, it's kind of like the brain just starts slowly turning down the volume, and it doesn't just turn it off, because then you would notice. It's just the slow turning down of sensations and of connection to yourself, to the point where you are disconnected, but you don't know, because it was such a gradual process. Like that thing about the frog in the the pan, like if
Yes,
you just slowly start turning it up, it doesn't even realize it's boiling. It's that
right.
same concept of what's happening in your body. You're storing, like, think about, the pot is like your stress, like you are building stress up, but it's coming in so gradually, and your brain is just turning off sensation so you don't notice it. And we ignore pain, we push through pain, we ignore our thoughts, we ignore our feelings, we ignore our emotions, we push them aside, we don't deal with them. And every time we do that, the brain has to then turn off different, usually in the uh, sensory system, will turn off sensation there. See,
Yeah.
so people
Yeah,
have numb areas and have no idea.
that's so fascinating, because as you were saying that, I was also thinking of things that you hear just on a regular basis, like, push through the pain. Like that is, that's absolutely a thing. Push through the pain. Like, don't share about your emotions. Like no one cares about your emotions, or your emotions make you weak, or like, yeah, just, I mean, all of you were talking about the societal practices that we have that have our nervous system start to increase stress and trauma, and start to also increase that disassociation and that like slow brain turn off. But I'm hearing all of those phrases
Yeah.
as you're sharing that as well. So what then, so you have people that come to you, they have this is their experience. They have experience of like disassociation or numbness or like a lack of pleasure. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The biggest issue is they don't know they're dissociated and numb. They have no
Mhm.
idea, because they're numb. They don't know that they're numb. And it's not, as I said, it's not like 100% turn off. It's just you're turned down so
Mhm.
that it's blocked, so you can't experience your full height of pleasure. And so
Mhm.
you need so then you do need something like a vibrator to be able to get you that intensity, to be able to break through that numbness that you're experiencing. You just don't even realize that that's what's happening.
Wow. Well,
Right.
I feel like this is so relatable
Yeah.
for a lot of people. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so relatable. Okay, so this is how people like this is how it happens. This is how like this is where we get to, and like the ick. This is what I call the ick, right?
Yep.
This is the ick. And we're actually going to take another break, and we're going to give ourselves some relief from the ick. Ooh, let's come into the pleasure part when we come back on break. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Okay, we're going to go on a break. And when we come back, let's talk about pleasure. All right, welcome back to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, courageously expanding love. And we are talking to Wendy Perkins about pleasure and biohacking your nervous system so that you can experience a fuller range of pleasure. And one of the things that we've been covering in this episode is how your body stores trauma and how we all have like at least low level trauma, and that we just get numb and we don't realize that we get numb because it's that slow turn off, right? That
Correct.
slow wind down. And so all of a sudden it's just like, it just becomes our normal lived experience, and we don't realize that there's this entire world of pleasure that we're actually missing out on. And so now we're going to talk about the world we're missing out on, which is pleasure. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Okay, I'm just like a kid in a candy shop right now. I'm like, okay, tell me, talk to me about pleasure, Wendy.
Um, so pleasure is we're actually wired, the whole nervous system thing. We are actually wired to either move towards pain or move towards pleasure. And the cool thing about once you start really developing your own pleasure practices, and this can look so different for every person, it's going to be unique to you and what lights you up. But as you start moving towards pleasure, your brain will actually start wanting to wire and keep moving more and more and more to pleasure. So, sadly, people don't realize the best way to start experiencing pleasure is to just try. It doesn't even have to be, doing it perfectly, because that's a whole nother issue. People are always trying to be perfectionists and I have to figure it out exactly.
But I have to do it the right way. Wendy, I have to do it the right way though. Tell me the right way to do it.
Exactly. Yep, that's exactly what people do. And the key is to just start playing and being curious, because when you're curious, it actually changes the different brain structures that are being activated. From most people are living in heightened anxiety, stress, depression, all these other modalities instead of in these pleasurable states. But the easiest way to actually start bringing pleasure into your life is to start being curious. And one of the ways I recommend doing it is even maybe being curious about where you might be experiencing numbness. Just even being able to go in and start having this direction of like, let me see, where am I numb? Can I feel this? Can I not feel that? And going, and especially for females, going in to yourself using your fingers or a dildo and going in and finding what areas inside are numb. Can you actually feel every single, centimeter of your yoni?
Yeah, no, that sounds beautiful and terrifying. Like I'm reminded of a woman that I know who's actually now like a master coach of eroticism. Like she's one of the women that I've trained with. And her origin story was that she didn't even want to touch herself. She didn't want to touch her vulva. She definitely didn't want to like finger inside of her vagina at all.
Right.
And so like I guess one of the things that I want to say is just start where you start. But the other thing is like, yeah, like what if you don't, like, even if you're like, okay, be curious, but like, I don't even know like where to start.
So when I work, right now I was speaking from like an overall standpoint, like this is the ideal place, right? But I know everyone does have their past histories, and in particular for people who are not yet comfortable with their own skin, and you need to start with the skin, right? So you can't go deep until you've started really getting comfortable on the surface. And so I will actually tell people to start, paying attention by themselves. Like, what do you actually like? What part of your skin on the outside do you like to be touched? Is it right here behind the ear? Or is it down the neck? Is it, caressing the side of your breast or going down your side? Like, where's the most sensitive areas that feel the best and what kind of speed and what kind of pressure, and really start playing with that and being curious, right? Like, well, I've had a guy kiss me on the back of the neck, and I've had another girl, kiss the side of my breast. Yes, I'm bisexual. I was like, and I like them both, but which one did I actually like more, right? So going in and playing around with yourself and like really stopping to be curious and see what parts of my body feel good and what parts don't feel good. And, does it actually feel really good when you slowly move your fingertips across your belly, but then the thought of someone else touching your belly terrifies you, right? That's a big thing to be aware of, because then every feeling, emotion, pain, all of those things that we're supposed to push through, shove away, put down, are all signals to ourselves about an area of our body that wants to be healed. And that is the stress and trauma actually trying to come up and resolve itself, because one of the amazing things about the human body is that it actually wants to get into homeostasis, which is in balance, and it actually wants to relieve and release all of that energy you've been storing. And so it will bring it up through memories, feelings, thoughts, and emotions.
Oh my gosh, I think that that's such an important thing to say, note here, is that, yeah, those things that come up, because that's one of the things that I hear that with people is that they're like, I don't want to do that, because then it does bring those things up. It doesn't feel good, or it does bring up a memory, or it does bring up an emotion that I don't like to feel. And so what I'm hearing you say is like even getting curious about those things because your body's
Yes.
trying to tell you something.
Yes. This is the work that I do with people. People come to me usually for some specific, issue related to their sex life. Maybe they're dry, maybe they want to have a vaginal orgasm, whatever, they want to learn how to squirt, whatever the thing is. But because of understanding how it is all centered in your nervous system, it is all about learning. I teach people how to learn and heal from their trauma, heal from the stress, how to create a container of safety for themselves so they can process these emotions and process these feelings. I think it's integral that people learn how to work with people who have embodiment practices, mindset, all the things that we know we're supposed to do. There's a reason for it. There's biological reasons why those work for everyone. And it's important that you find the right people to work with. You, me, other amazing people out there too, to actually help working on healing, because you heal when you're safe. And so it's important that you learn how to do this in a safe way. One of the things I'm very, very big on is being trauma informed. I don't necessarily like always using that word, but it's the word that people know. But it's very important that people realize anytime feelings, thoughts, emotions come up, that you can re-traumatize yourself if you're not in a safe setting. And this is why getting curious with yourself and learning how to create these safe practices within yourself will help speed your healing and your transformation very quickly once you learn how to create that safety.
Yeah. So do you recommend that you just do this by yourself, or can you do this with a partner?
Starting first by yourself, because you will always feel safest by yourself. And it doesn't mean that your partner's unsafe. So I want to make that very, very,
Yeah.
very clear. But as humans, anytime there is another human around, we have this part of our nervous system. It's called the social engagement system, where we will start in training with the other individual, and we will start this reciprocal process where we are, and in particular females will be interpreting the faces of the individual and trying to figure out what they're thinking and feeling in order to adapt our behavior to what's going on with them. So when you're doing these practices for the first time, I do recommend doing them by yourself first, figuring out what you like, and then bringing in your partner. Because when you do it first by yourself, you don't have that extra hurdle of interpreting faces and being mindful of the other person's thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, you're not trying to do, too many things at once. You're just able to focus fully on yourself, your nervous
Yes.
system, your pleasure, your body. Yeah, all the thoughts and feelings, just your thoughts and feelings and body sensations, and not multiple thoughts and feelings and body sensations that you might have to interact with. That makes
Right.
total.
And then also from the other standpoint that I want to bring up too is most, I'm not saying all, but most, most women and females that I know are brought up in a way where they were praised for taking care of others. And so
Mhm.
most women will, have this learned behavior of taking care of other people before themselves. And so for these practices where you're learning how to come back into your body, if you are worried about, and even subconsciously, maybe you're consciously trying to stay present, but
Mhm.
subconsciously, because of the way you're wired and your learned behavior, you're going to be trying to take their well-being as more important than your own. It's learned behavior. So
Right.
the way you unlearn that behavior is to be present with yourself and to do this with yourself first, so that way it's almost impossible to learn a new behavior when you're under stress. And even though your partner is safe and comforting, all of this, the activity that you're doing is uncertain, therefore it's stressful, and therefore it creates this whole cascade of chemical processes that without your learned behavior of practicing it by yourself will make it difficult for you to get into your body if you don't know how to do that already.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense to me.
AKA biohacking your nervous system
Yes.
to
Okay.
be able
No.
to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And that actually makes really clear. Yeah. Again. Yeah. All the way back to the beginning of our show here and talking about biohacking your nervous system. It's like, oh, okay, that now makes sense. That clicks in my brain. I'm like, okay, that's what biohacking your nervous system is.
Yeah, it's about learning these shortcuts and
Mhm.
making it easy for you to make the changes
Mhm.
to improve and regulate your nervous system. So that way, when you are under stress, you can respond in the way that maintains a more regulated nervous system.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, we are going to take one last break. And then when we get back, we're going to talk about, okay, so now what? Now what do we do? Now what do we do about this? Okay, excellent. All right. See everybody soon. All right. Welcome back to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, Courageously Expanding Love. And we are here with Wendy Perkins, and we are talking about pleasure, our nervous system, and biohacking our way to pleasure. And on the break, and I do want to share this on the actual show, but on the break, I was just saying like how Wendy, like how well you say and share things, and like I'm sitting here being like, oh yeah, when I do this, or oh yeah, like that one time when this happened, and oh yeah, and like in this relationship, and oh my god, I should have done this. Like I'm like seriously, like I'm getting so much out of this episode, so I hope that every person who's listening is also getting a lot out of it as well. But I really do think, like, because our nervous system is, and I talk about this in my work, is like when you get to the source of something, then everything makes sense. It's like when you get
Mhm.
all the way down to the source of something, then it like unlocks all the layers on top of it. And
Yep,
our
yep,
nervous system is a source. Like,
yep,
yeah,
yep,
like it's like how much further you can't get further down than that
yep.
with this stuff. And so I think that that's why the work that you do is so important, is because it really gets down to the source of what people are dealing with in their bodies, and the trauma that they're experiencing, and the stress that they're experiencing, and the pleasure that they're trying to experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I said at the beginning, how it's clear that our bodies are a physical representation of our nervous system. And this is science. It's not just me saying this is actually what is happening.
Not just a cute thing to
And
say.
yeah. So once you understand that, the nervous system is energy, it's basically a, one sodium electron, changing places with another one, right? And it creates this whole entire process. But it's an energy system, and there's multiple energy systems within our body. And I'm bringing this up specifically because we're talking about bringing more, pleasure in biohacking. And this is, I think, an important concept for people to understand, is that there's like the physical body, and then there's the mental, which is more like the nervous system part. And then there's the emotional, which is the fascia, which is where the stress and trauma gets stored. And then there's also this spiritual, I call it spiritual, but it's the biofield. There's research on the biofield. So I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's the biofield. And once you understand how these 4 energy systems work with each other, that is when, and you start working on each of them, that is when you make these big progress and changes. And the easiest way to do that is actually through pleasure, because pain will shut down certain systems. So if you're thinking things through and talking things through, it's going to shut down your emotional body. Right. So if you're thinking of pain, it shuts down the emotions, because they're 2 energy systems. The energy don't like to flow at the same time in the same way. So, but when you go towards pleasure, both the mental energy system and the emotional energy system can flow at the same time and allow energy to flow through the nervous system as well, and all within the biofield.
Wow, isn't that so interesting? That's
Yeah.
so
So
beautiful.
it's actually the quickest way. Sorry, I didn't mean to
That's the quickest way. No, yeah, no apologies necessary. Please, no apologies necessary. But no, I love this. I love this as well, as someone who does this work, because you are always trying to find, like, what is the most effective way that I can, as a professional in this field, that I can help my clients, that I can help people who are struggling in this area. And so I think that it's fascinating that, you have found this way where it's just like, yeah, like this is the effective way to do that, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as one professional to another professional, and to everybody listening, the quickest way to heal is to create safety. That is how you heal. The nervous system cannot heal and release the energy if you're not safe, if you don't feel safe. So however you go about doing that, that's why self-pleasure practices are a really good way to do it, because you're doing something that's pleasurable. And obviously my focus is orgasm. So I'm talking specifically sexual pleasure practices, but it doesn't have to be sexual pleasure. I just want to mention that. But when you are creating safety and pleasure, it is the quickest way to heal any kind of stress and trauma.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
which is why some people have these amazing healing experiences when they, do dance, because they're in a safe place and they're moving their body and they're having this pleasurable experience of dancing, right? Can't you see? So like people who go and do the pole dancing classes or the boudoir classes and learn how to twerk, and they go to these classes with other women that are creating this container of safety for themselves, and they're moving their bodies and they're having fun, and they're being curious, and they're playing, they're literally moving all of that stored stress and energy through their body, also creating this container of safety to allow the energy to move through their nervous system more freely.
Yeah, no, I think that that's really beautiful. And it's also like the feminist, like FU part of me is like, yeah, that's why pole dancing classes. Yeah. Because healing, okay?
Yeah, like who knew you were healing trauma when you went to pole dancing class?
Oh my God, I love that so much. Okay, tell us how we are wrapping up the show.
Yes.
And I want to make sure that you can share about all of your stuff, but the questions that I want to ask you are, what does love mean to you?
Okay. Love means being accepting of the other person as they are.
Thank you. All right. If people get only one thing out of this episode, what do you hope that they got?
That it's safe to be curious about their pleasure.
Ooh, yes. And what is one action that people can take?
Start having fun touching themselves.
Awesome. All right. How can people find you and what are you promoting right now?
I'm Wendy at Owning Your O, and I'm Instagram Owning Your O or Facebook Owning Your O. And then my website is owningyouro.com. And I'm getting ready to launch and very soon a program called Quantum Sexuality, where I teach people the foundations of creating safety within themselves and working with the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual aspects. And we wrap up the program with a bit of quantum sex magic because I am an orgasm coach.
Yes, awesome. And all of those links are in the bio as well. And I believe that you sent me a discount code.
Yeah, so I think I sent you the discount code. I'll make sure I've got the right one, but there should be 2 discount codes, one for yoni de-armoring. So if you're not ready for the quantum sexuality program and you just want to start learning how to heal the trauma from your yoni, I sent you a discount code for that. So your listeners can get that at a discount. And then I will send a special discount code for the quantum sexuality too.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so Yoni de-armoring and the discount code is ELZ Cunningham, which is my Instagram handle. And I will also put that in the show notes as well. And yeah, Wendy, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you. Thank you for all of the work that you do. Thank you for the research, time, effort, energy, expertise. I'm a huge fan. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
And thank you everyone who has been listening or watching. Remember to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, make sure that you tune in every single week. We have amazing people on the show talking about love, sex, pleasure, relationships, taboo topics, kink, things that you wish that you could talk about, but you just don't get a chance to. And so make sure that you tune in every Tuesday live or catch the aired episode afterwards on Thursdays. Until next time, keep loving.
You have been listening to The Elizabeth Cunningham Show, Courageously Expanding Love with me, Elizabeth Cunningham. Tune in live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on transformationtalkradio.com, where we shed light on relationships, sex, love, and the ways we wish we could be, but never thought were possible. Learn to love yourself and create the relationships you want. Connect with me at elizabethannCunningham.com. That's elizabethannCunningham.com.